Hello, this is the voice of Stewart Pearce, and welcome to my series of deep dialogues. These are vital conversations I engage in with global soul stewards from all over the planet, providing us with vital understandings about how we can create a new hierarchy of values to help us evolve into a brave new world. I hope you enjoy, and thanks for listening.
Here we are, everybody. I am so excited. And Sheila, the wonderful Sheila Gillette, and I have just been having a pre-show chat. We got some really interesting stuff to share with you. So welcome, welcome, welcome. As usual, forgive me if I don't continue going through the chat box and mentioning all names, but just a few welcomes: Stacey, Donna, Laura, Stewart, I think I know him, Sonia, and Johanna. We have people from all over the world. It's wonderful. Sonia, what time of day is it? You're in Western Australia, 3:32 a.m. Bless you. You're so indeed angelic presence. Let me introduce you. Oh, more people are pouring in. Sarah, Maria, Erica, Little Starseed, all the way from Oregon. Stephen, I think you may be the only man there apart from myself. So welcome, welcome, welcome. We have before us the wonderful Sheila Gillette. Let me share with you, for those of you who are unfamiliar, I don't think you are, but let me share with you her remarkable pedigree and biography. For over 40 years, Sheila has appeared on radio, television, in workshops, sharing the inimitable essence of THEO's teaching, whilst authoring books such as The Fifth Dimension, Channels to a New Reality, and Soul Truth, A Guide to Inner Peace, the latter which she co-authored with her wonderful husband, Marcus. Sheila's multimedia website and global community shares the wisdom of the angelic hierarchy to assist humanity as we aspire to higher levels of consciousness. In 1969, Sheila virtually died whilst giving birth to her third child, and in recovery began to experience a volume of psychic phenomena. This experience eventually led to her channeling a communion of 12 angelic beings known as THEO. THEO speaks with one voice and has assisted thousands and thousands of people, notably one very, very famous lady called Esther Hicks. Many, many years ago, when Esther began to channel the now highly renowned global phenomenon known as the teachings of Abraham, Esther sought out Sheila for teaching about mediumship. Paramount to THEO's teaching is the power of soul integration as an authentic path to wholeness, to what we conceive of as enlightenment, which guides the individual and collective consciousness through the challenges inherent at this time of the great shift. Sheila Gillette, welcome.
Stewart, it's so nice to be with you again. Gosh, we were just talking about it's been almost a year that we've been together. And I so enjoy our conversations and dialogues. So I'm so happy to be back again with you and with your audience.
Well, you're immensely generous, and I feel very flattered, so thank you. Because I remember from the first time that we met, which is now probably about 6 years ago in Los Angeles, that at Conscious Life Expo, and then when we had dinner together, and you're just the resonation, the vibration is so much of planetary or interplanetary kinship. So I know my soul knows yours so well.
I believe that's very true.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, Sheila and I were just talking about the fact that this is called THEO vis-a-vis transcendence. And we were talking about this time as being a mighty time of transformation and therefore leading us towards transcendence. And what was particularly germane in our conversation before coming on air was the nature of how this time is spilling over in all sorts of extraordinary degrees. And Sheila was giving me a perspective as a woman and as a mature woman, having lived for several years on this planet. We're both in our seventh decade. And so, Sheila was referring to what it was like as a woman in the 60s and the 70s. Well, Sheila, as you've heard from her bio, woke up in 1969 to a plethora of psychic phenomenon. So if I may turn to just tune us back to that moment that we were discussing before we came on air, could you perhaps give us a perspective on where you saw the world in 1970 as a woman?
Well, as a woman, and having grown up in that time, the only right as a woman I had, personal decision right, was to vote. Women at that time could not rent an apartment, could not buy a home, could not have a credit card, could not have a bank account without a cosigner. And when the women's rights for their bodies was passed, then many of those rights started coming to fruition that we now so enjoy. And it makes my soul cry out, if you would, to have what's going on now to try to take all those rights away. Because it's not just rights for birth, it's all the rights that we have been enjoying for decades now as women, but also culturally for everybody on the planet. This will just be the beginning of repealing any of the things we've come to know and enjoy as personal rights in our country, the United States, and many countries in the world.
Yeah, I mean, if this, of course, ladies and gentlemen, you're aware of what we're talking about. The possible ruling. It was only a leak that was received, only a leak. But it seems to have created a tidal wave of a furor about the possibility that the Supreme Court will revoke an essential condition that was created nearly 49 years ago, called the Roe versus Wade statement, which became a legal right, so that women had absolute management of their bodies. And this was particularly in relation to abortion. But what Sheila's sharing is that if this is revoked, and it is no longer a woman's privilege to have management of her own body, this is going to extrapolate into all sorts of different degrees. For example, single-sex marriage will become prohibited, personal right mechanisms will become prohibited, health rights will be taken away. So Obamacare will just simply go whizzing out of the window, and voting rights will be affected. So this is very severe. And so that's what we're actually talking about. So we've got this perspective from your point of view as a woman, but of course we also know you to be a global soul steward that channels these extraordinary beings of light. Has THEO come through to you to speak about this particular context?
Not this particular context, but in the sense of all the changes that are coming now in the shift of consciousness. And this right was never codified into law. That's why it's being attacked now. And it should have been at the time, and was not, and has not over the years been done so. However, it's waking people up. We as global citizens needed a huge awakening. Theo's been talking about this happening now in the fifth dimension now for 5 decades, that this is a time of, out of this chaos will come order by the demands of the people. It's not the politicians that are going to make the change. It's us. It's us demanding and saying, no, we're not going back to the dark ages. Whatever your beliefs are about life, this is more than that. This is about your human right to live the life you want to live, whoever you are. And so this is just THEO would call this a myopic view. And they've been using the word aperture a lot lately to broaden the aperture of your view, your perception. And that's what we're talking about. This is a much bigger thing. So if we broaden the aperture of what we're looking at, what we're hearing, and get more in the detail of the possibilities when these choices could be made, then we'll get a better understanding of what could come next.
So presumably the teaching will be, and please illuminate, I will just provide a sketch from a micro point of view. The teaching is that this has come as a shock within the collective, and that after 2 years of global pandemic and the possibility of a really difficult recessionary period, because we're all seeing globally how the prices have gone shooting sky high, and I understand that in the US, gas price has gone into an all-time high. But what we're being taught from via the mega intelligence of spirit, the macro, is that we need to firstly not react. Otherwise, what we're doing is providing a disturbance within our neurological pathway, which is going to affect the etheric sheath. And as a result of that, we feed the panic rather than heal the panic that potentially could happen. So to find stillness within, so that we can actually determine that we are now, as you were just saying, we are the master mistresses of our own destiny. And if I may say, not that I'm actually making all of you wonderful women, that you have the onus, as the word was once used, but I do believe that when the women's voices are aroused, the mountains will move. That you are changing the course of history by stepping forward and being very liberated by the way that you use your voices. That the women and the girls are writing the next chapter of history, or maybe it should be called herstory.
Yeah, I love the way you speak of it, because that's really true. And, as you're speaking, Stewart, I was thinking about the war in Ukraine. And I've been reading about the Russian mothers who are losing their children, and that they have such a powerful voice that can, to your point about the women of the world making this tremendous change of consciousness and demanding it. You're absolutely right that this is the time of birthing this new consciousness. So of course, it would seem appropriate that the women would be the ones to initiate the birth.
And yesterday afternoon, I was called by a friend of mine, Spirit Initiate, to work with 10 Ukrainian refugees, all ladies, all mothers with their children. The children didn't necessarily take part in the workshop, but we met for 2 hours and they told me their story, which was just extraordinary. And, I would say that the major theme was one of grieving. But then, of course, the sub-issue was how I could help them to move into a space of healing with the grieving, so that by the time we finished chanting in the workshop, they had actually reached a point of seeming resolution about how they can now begin to start praying faithfully for Mother Ukraine, which has always been referred to in the Russias as being the cradle of Russia, because Odessa and Kiev were the founding principles within the whole substance of Mother Russia, which of course has been taken over by the male version of socialism in the form of, as it was in the form of the Soviet Russia, and how they are now going to be moving into allowing all of that information to journey through the people back home, and the refugees that are going to be arriving in the United States as well as here, so that they can get together and chant regularly for peace.
You know, THEO speaks of, as you know, of a process they call soul integration. And they've been bringing this through now for over 4 decades. And it's an internal process for each and every one of us to release beliefs that we've adopted in our lives about ourselves that are simply untrue, that we're not worthy, we're not lovable, and the not enoughnesses. Mm. And in that, recognizing where the beliefs first began or were created, they can be changed. And THEO says history won't change, events won't change because they are history, but our perception of them can change. Our perception of those events in our lives that have held us back from being all we can be on a soul level. That's part of what is a process that can lead us into this new world, if you would, and knowing that we're more than these physical bodies. We're strong, resilient souls that are birthing a new world and a new way of being in the world. And to your point about making demands of what the people want, not the politicians. If we really know and believe that they are our servants, particularly in the democratic countries, but there are very few autocratic and dictatorial countries that are going to change. THEO's talked about this, as I said, for decades. In the original book, The Fifth Dimension, Channels to a New Reality, they spoke of this time. And it's interesting. I just realized this the other day. The book was published before the Berlin Wall came down, just prior to it. And THEO had said this change that we're all experiencing would begin in the Baltic states. And here we are.
Yeah.
This is this chaos and these courageous people and the women that are holding, to your point with the women you're working with, chanting for peace, to bring peace. This is a powerful time to be alive. It's an amazing time, even though it's scary with all the changes that are trying to be wrought upon us. We can say no. We can say no. This is not going to be the way it's going to be. But we have to gather together and lock arms to do so. But I think people are ready to do that.
I pray so, and certainly my life is now in devotion, has been for many, many years, in devotion to the arousal of the divine feminine. So it's something from a pragmatic point of view that I will be managing, I will be officiating, I will be facilitating, getting large groups of ladies together. And of course, as you know, my project, Diana, the Voice of Change, the Diana Heart Path, is very much about this. There's an interesting comment in the chat box, if I may refer to, because there's a subtle question here. And this is from Lynn Brown. I would like to ask what you mean about the quickening, that there is a Celtic teaching about the quickening. Well, actually, it's not just Celtic, is it? It moves through the permeation of the different cultures around the world. It's a very ancient word, quickening. It goes all the way back into medievalism. And of course, to be quickened really means to be vitally alive. But I feel that what Lynn is talking about, the quickening when the soul enters the body just before birth. I don't quite know what the question is, Lynn, but I feel that apropos what wonderful Sheila is sharing with us, that this is a time of quickening.
Oh, absolutely. It's a time of quickening. Because we're birthing a new world.
Yeah.
We are not just sitting by. Hopefully we're not just sitting by and being apathetic. This is an awakened time, and that we all need to have a mindset of the change and the expansion for all of us that can occur, and laying the new foundations for this global community, this common unity of the human species that then will affect all the species on this planet. You know, Theo says this planet's going to be here longer than any of us that are myself and anyone listening to this. And we saw in the pandemic, when everything stopped, people stopped doing things, the planet started cleansing itself immediately, coming into its homeostasis, if that's a word you can use for the planet, but coming into its highest place of being. The water started clearing up, the air did. And so we could see, if we change just a little bit, what could happen for our planet and for our lives. I mean, Theo talks about these changes, these mindset changes. It's like the thermostat in our house. And if we change the thermostat in our house just 1 or 2 degrees, it changes our whole environment, doesn't it? If we change our minds, that's our thermostat in consciousness. If we change it just a little bit, it changes the trajectory of life forever.
Well, this is beautiful. And so to use the theme of quickening, where the nature of soul becomes present within physiology, we are here as soulful beings, as soul initiates, but we're also giving birth to a new intelligence about our spirit and therefore about our soul. Would you agree that this is what we're doing? Is we're moving away from human beings having a religious experience and determining that we really are spiritual beings having a human experience, and that this time of quickening is to become mindful in each of our actions, in each of our behaviors, about the substance of our soul. And I know that that's really at essence, or at least I'm assuming, and maybe my assumption is incorrect, that soul integration, this singular teaching of Theo's, is to bring that into consideration. So we wake up, we quicken.
Yes. And Theo has often said that if everybody on the planet soul integrated, shifted those beliefs, we'd have peace on our planet, because we would treat each other appropriately with kindness and love. Theo talks about God not a being with a white hair and a long white beard sitting on a mountain, but a solid state of unconditional love. It's not a feeling, it's a solid state of being. And when we achieve that on the inner, then everything changes. Our lives change dramatically, as well as the way we are with each other, because we're a collaborative species, not competitive. Yes, we might compete in sports. That's just to make us better, but we're better together than we are apart. And we can create much better together when we're working on something together, and that's been proven over time. But as we move forward in a higher conscious state, just imagine what we can create together.
Beautiful. Thank you. That gives us all a lift of hope, and everything begins to shine again. Of course, this quickening also allows us to recognize that the children who are being born at this time have a rare degree of intelligence, and that they're often invested in an empathic, compassionate, co-creative and non-competitive stance in the world. They do this very instinctively. And so they are helping us begin to see what our future possibly can be, because they are the future. Does Theo address the multidimensionality of the young ones that are being born in the form of the indigo rainbow crystal children?
Yes, they don't label them. I mean, they agree with, as others have spoken of them, but they speak of these wise souls coming to nurture this new world that is coming to fruition, all the new structures, because this is the evolution of the planet, but of this species on this planet. And that it's one choice of incarnating. We have billions of choices, but our souls, they say it's like winning a lottery to get a body. We should appreciate it in that way of thinking, because each of us have come here to be significant. They talk, well, we talked the last time about this, Stewart. You were talking about our note, our voice. And Theo calls it our soul note. And you were describing beautifully of what that is in our voice. We all need to speak or sing that soul note, whatever that is in our creative energy field, because we're here to be significant and to make the changes in ourselves and our consciousness and allow this fuller evolution to come to fruition.
And so by tuning into this extraordinary, radical, but immensely ancient energy, i.e. our soul's note, we harmonize ourselves. We harmonize physiologically, neurologically, psychically, and thereby we actually harmonize with each other. And so it ceases the pixelation of opinionation. And it seems to me that from the political point of view and also from the capitalist or commercial point of view, so much diversity has taken place through opinionation. And I was, ladies and gentlemen, I was sharing a quote that came to me today, that I was sharing this with Sheila earlier on. When you think like a mother, or maybe this needs to say, when you think like a woman, automatically mother prioritizes the needs of the many, not the whims and the opinions of the few, which is always about the male, the male version of, I need to prove myself in relation to my ego, and so I need to compete against you, rather than moving into the pathways of harmony that we were just suggesting. Somebody just wrote something very interesting that I just wanted to pick up for you. There's a warrior girl who is apparently doing your psychic self-discovery course and is having an amazing time. Oh yes, Stacy was saying, I'm not sure men will give up their power to better balance everyone's lives. My immediate response to that is, I understand there's a moment of depression, as it were, in that statement. But all men have mothers. And I feel that the mothers need to step forward, even if they are removed from physical life and they're in the spirit world. They need to step forward and gently tweak the ear of their son to remind them of the fact that they were born of woman, not of man, and automatically move into a much greater appreciation of the divine feminine that's more moving forward at this time. Somebody's asking a question about, I know the main focus lately is Ukraine, but I was wondering if it would be a good idea to pray and send energy to North Korea. Oh, please, of course. I'm sure Sheila would agree. And Afghanistan and Syria and Nigeria. Just all you have to do is to join my very, very polyglot meditations where we pray for the whole world. But please, do it. Let's any questions you want to ask, please put them in the chat box. Sheila, coming back to the state of, I'd like to singularize this for a moment and then move into plurality. You, as this extraordinary woman who has lived as a very successful spiritual teacher, a female spiritual teacher, as well as being a successful woman of the world with 4 amazing children and now all of these grandchildren. And I believe that you are enraptured in a very happy marriage with Marcus.
Yes,
Uh,
I am.
he's give him my love. He's an amazing man.
I will.
As you balance your spirit life with your humanity, is there anything specific that you would like to suggest as the wise woman that you are to the women who are with us during this particular time zone and also those who are listening into the recording? Are there any ethos that you can give us?
Well, it's to remember, and it's not just women, not just men, we as humans, we're powerful beings. We're powerful souls that have chosen to be incarnate. It hasn't been demanded of us. We chose to be here. And when you recognize that, you can begin to recognize the empowered statement that is, that you are a soul, and your soul is much larger than your physical body. This body is our earth suit to navigate this beautiful planet. And we could have chosen many other choices, but we knew how exquisite being on earth was and how being human was a tremendous experience of learning of emotions and experience psychic abilities. We have this body with all its senses to understand that, and a mind to understand it, a consciousness to understand it. And when we realize that we are more than our physical body, and we extend much further beyond it, and we begin to use all of our abilities, and of which are many, we begin to understand that we can use that energy in very positive ways. It's just a mindset that we're limited. It's just a belief system that can change. And it doesn't matter what happened to us.
Yeah.
You know, that our experiences in life are only the curriculum of our life and our learning. But it doesn't define us. It only engages us to know more. And so if we can shift our thinking from being a victim, because THEO says there's no victims here, they're just volunteers. We all volunteered to be in these bodies, but we're more than that. And getting in touch with the more than that is this time we're living in. And to the woman who is in our psychic and spiritual expansion course, she's experimenting and experiencing and coming to know the more than that about herself. And that's the gift you give yourself, that curiosity. Who am I? Not only who am I going to be, but who am I right now? And you're the sum total of all your human lives and more. And that your Akashic record lives in you, in every cell of your body. It's in your soul. And you can know that. You can connect to that. And that's the time we're living in, Stewart, as you know, the power in that and in your teachings and the collective consciousness. This is an exquisite time, magnificent time to be alive.
This you're so extraordinary. Something radical has just taken place, where in all of your majesty and all of your magic and all of your mystery, you've just taken us right into the embrace of oneness. whereas our conversation had a degree of pixelation about it, in the sense that we were commenting on what the divisiveness or the divisiveness is all about in the world, and yet, hopefully giving uplift and hope to the point that this is up to us to do something about. And you have just given us the most extraordinary gift. Have you noticed, ladies and gentlemen, how Sheila's entire being has just become even more illuminated? Because as she was speaking, she was bringing forth, obviously, the fundamental vibration of all that she believes in, but also because she is a channel, she is an oracle for THEO, that suddenly everything shifted. So
I've been a good student.
it was just wonderful, wonderful watching that. I hope you all noticed that. There are no victims, there are only volunteers. Exactly. A 180 degree or a 360 degree shift means we come back on ourselves, but a 180 degree shift is absolutely extraordinary. And as a result of this, we become so much more in tune with the higher self, do we not? It reminds in this moment of when Barack Obama, I call him Om Bama, when he was in the position of the hierarchical position of the supreme leader, and he was facing constant criticism and division, that Michelle was heard to say, "When they go low, we go high." And so it's really important to really see ourselves as having wings, metaphorically speaking, and flying as high as possible into the elevated nature of thought, but to engage not in the fantasy of thought, but what Sheila's just done, which was to embody absolutely what you were saying. At the moment, I know that you're engaged in a number of really exciting projects. And I'm always enticed by the ingenuity and the inspiration of what you bring through, what THEO brings through you. Is there a particular project that we can illuminate for the conviction of the watchers, the listeners, so that they can tune into your website?
Oh, absolutely. We're just starting a 12-week program called Spiritual and Psychic Exploration. It's 12 weeks that's live with myself and Marcus and our team and THEO, teaching people how not to be afraid of their psychic gifts, their intuitive gifts, and what they are and how to receive. So that's starting on the 24th of May. And then we have a new book coming out.
Oh, wow.
It's at the publisher right now. It's called The Art of Relationship. And it will be a whole program. But we asked THEO a few years ago, what's next? Where should we focus? And they said relationships, because everything is relational. And so this book touches on the relationship to the self, first and foremost, and then all other relationships we have in our lives, all other relationships, primary relationships, end of life relationships, deceased loved ones, children, marriage, all of the spectrum of relational experiences. And we're quite proud of it. So I'll be looking forward to sending one to you, Stewart, as soon as we have them available. But, if you think about it, that's where we learn the most, is in our relationships. And, THEO often says, if you live alone, you can always be right. So in our lives and relationships, that's what reflects to us the areas we need to learn about ourselves and who we are in the world. So we're excited about that. And everything else, we have many mentoring programs that are available. So our website is a good place to check it out.
So we'll don't worry about doing it now, because I don't want to lose you, ladies and gentlemen, where your attention becomes pixelated by going to Sheila's website. But we'll make a mention of it towards the end of our conversation. And so you can really benefit very fully from all that she is teaching, and indeed her team. Lynn, you're in your 6th decade. Congratulations! And you're feeling disheartened. All the headway and spiritual growth I've seen in the world, it feels like we're taking steps backwards. How do we keep optimist? Well, I think by embracing all that Sheila's talking about. Is there any particular injection that you can bring at this point? It's interesting because you're being so wonderfully inspirational and you're shining this beautiful light. And yet automatically we have Lynn coming in with saying, yes, but I'm losing it. I'm losing it. So we waver. It's this pixelation consciousness.
Yes. You know, with all the chaos that's going on, it's hard not to get caught up and be chaotic also. And so what I would invite people to do is go beyond this moment. Go to your future self who's already been through this. And what does that part of yourself want from this life? And I'm going to say to Lynn, you're in your 6th decade. Great, you're halfway. Because THEO says we can live to be 140 and 150. And it's just changing our mindset. You know, with the integrative process and laying new neural pathways in our brain, we can change our DNA, not hanging on to the beliefs that have been passed along all these centuries. And that's possible. Mm-hmm. So THEO often says to us, we're in the what if. It's either in fear or faith, and fear and faith ask the same, to believe in something not yet seen. So why not have faith instead of what if something bad's really going to happen? Instead of that, what if something great's going to happen? Mm-hmm. What if you create something great that has an influence on all of us? You've come here to be significant. What is that? What is your dream? What is the idea that if you had everything in the world that you needed at your disposal, what would you do? Who would you be? Start thinking that way, because it's possible. It's only in beliefs that we can't. You know, Henry Ford said, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. And we all have evidence in our lives that that's true. If we make something a must in our mind, a no doubtedness, everything works out on our behalf. And so we need to start thinking in not what if something bad's going to happen. That's the old default system. To what's something great that I can make happen energetically just by knowing the truth of it. So that's what I would encourage everybody to do. That's how I live. Truly, that's how I live my life. It's not that I don't notice the chaos, and it's not that I'm not sad about some of the things that are happening. I am. But I do trust, and I'm optimistic and know we're going to get past this and we're going to be better for it.
So the key is actually to transmute the fear into faith by choosing, very simply, the bliss body rather than automatically going back into the pain body. One of the core teachings I have is to really awaken the heart, because the heart, you know, I was only exchanging with a friend of mine yesterday who's working in San Diego and teaching neuroplasticity as a communication skill to scientists. Quite interesting. We're talking about how the heart has an autorhythm that awakens far before the brain within the fetus, and that actually all of the information that the brain sends to the heart refutes and doesn't obey, but all the information through the 400,000 neural pathways from the heart to the brain, automatically the brain always obeys. Isn't that fascinating? So there's a biofeedback. So if we can actually tune ourselves into the bliss body in a very real sense, in a very realistic sense is what I mean, rather than dealing with, well, let me have another cup of coffee, or let me have another cigarette, or let me have another glass of whatever it is, whatever beverage it may be. Let me take drugs, whatever. If we can tune into our spiritual toolkit that we have at our disposal, we automatically begin to make greater choices. I was thinking, as you were speaking, I guess it's because I'm dazzled by your beauty, I was seeing that word that Audrey Hepburn gave us, the word impossible, and how she converted into I'm possible.
I love that. I love that. And THEO talks about where the heart being the seat of the soul, where our totality is. And even to your point, when we were talking about the soul know, you were talking about dropping down into the heart to know what that tone, that sound is. Just as we're speaking, that's where it all generates from, isn't it? I love that all of this science and spirituality, all of this is coming together cohesively. And science is proving spirit. THEO's come in taught us many concepts about the fifth dimension, about the world, about the universe, actually. And I loved something not a few years ago. THEO said there's tens of thousands of planets that could sustain life, that Earth is only one choice of incarnation. There's billions of them. And then I read in the paper where science had found that there were 40,000 planets that could sustain life. And I thought, another good confirmation, just keep them coming, because that's the expansiveness of knowing, getting out of the myopic, that broadening the aperture of our perceptivity is so necessary to be able to Lynn's point, to get out of the fear and the what if something bad will happen into the possibility thinking and the probability thinking that we are those creators that can make it happen.
And so we're moving into that wonderful space, zone, non-physical domain of the miraculous and the magical nature of who we truly are. As you were saying earlier, if only we can just simply waken to our significance and our magnificence, we automatically begin to realize that we're given these wonderful spacesuit bodies that are completely self-organizing and completely self-correcting if we allow them to be, rather than resisting the miraculous or the magical or the bliss of what life is all about. Does THEO have particular teachings, or yourself have particular teachings as a vessel of THEO, about how we can tune more readily into nature to recognize the beauty of life?
Yes. Well, they continually speak about meditation as being a way of quieting our conscious mind, quieting the chatter, how we speak to ourselves, how it's a tool that we can utilize not only for shifting consciousness, but physically, it's good for our body to do a meditation to quiet it all down, but it allows us to be more receptive to that knowing that is innate in each and every one of us, our higher self, our higher power, but also all of the guidance, all of the connectivity to spirit is just waiting for us to ask for assistance. They're not going to usurp our free will, and they're not going to do our life for us, but they're there to assist us in our asking. So it makes us available to all of that, to all of that resource. So why not?
Mm.
Why not tap into it?
Mm. And so again, going back to the new book about relationships and about relational values, we're really talking about these very pronounced choices that we're making at this time to develop a much easier relationship with the beauty of the planet, with the magic of the universe, and with the miraculous nature of the cosmos. And how we need to awaken that we are intergalactic beings, that we are stars wrapped in skin, rather than seeing ourselves as being downtrodden vehicles of nothingness. So please hear, Sonia, I know you're making a comment about this, but please hear what Sheila is saying, and what Theo is saying through her about meditations. Absolutely crucial. And, you know, we were just exchanging, I may put my 2 cents worth in here, about the nature of sound. For me, one of the predicaments about the way that we relate to one another is that we're so unfocused with our relationships that we very rarely bring reverence into our relationships, which is largely to do with the constant on, off, on, off, on, off, this rapid eye movement that's produced by overthinking and by being stressed out. And that we can actually reach a point of consistency and sustainability, moving back into flow with breath and with chant. But please, everybody, at least engage in one chanting 10 or 15 minutes every day, and you're going to bring yourself right back into absolute harmony, because all of our cells, all of our organs come into entrainment and coherence, which we call harmony. Absolutely amazing. When you publish the book, what will be your greatest desire that will happen from the publication?
That all who have ears to hear the message will be open and apply these messages to themselves, because they're examples and it's information, but it's only that, and it's no use unless we apply them in our lives. And as I stated, I am a student of THEO and have been for 5 decades. And it has changed my life to apply the wisdom that they've shared in how to interact, how to be in life, and more importantly, how to be me, how to love myself. For ultimately, THEO teaches us how to love ourselves. And when we do that, we have a tremendous amount of love to give everybody else.
I feel that that's just such a perfect note and moment to reach a point of conclusion in our conversation today. And I think it's so absolutely beautiful. And I want to thank you from the deep part of me, from the very bottom of my heart and the deeper caverns of my soul, for coming forth and sharing with us. Ryan, perhaps you could put up the website, asktheo.com. Thank you so much. Here is Sheila's website, THEO's website, everybody. And please do bask, feed from the wonders of what Sheila is bringing through from THEO in all of her courses, in all of her teachings, and in all of her books, because now the 3rd book is about to come out. And so when is the publication date?
It's at the publisher right now. Probably within a month, there will be some available. And
Wow.
we will be launching, but there will be pre-orders that can be had, and we'll know that soon. So if you get on our mailing list, you'll know immediately what will be happening.
Good prompt. On to Sheila's mailing list so you receive all this information. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending this wonderful conversation. And if I may ask, Sheila, would you come back in a year's time, please?
Oh, I would love to. I would love to. Stewart, I so enjoy our conversations and dialogues. I learn so much from you. It's just such a treat. And it's such an honor to be sharing this time with the soul brother. So thank you so much.
Bless you. I'm very, very touched. Oh, wow. I just had this wonderful vision of you and I sharing a platform now that we're moving gradually back to the possibility of hands-on teaching rather than Zoom to Zoom teaching. Thank you
That would
so
be delightful. Delightful. I would
Bless
love
you. That was a wonderful citation. I feel very, very touched. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed this. I have certainly, and a lot of people are writing wonderful deep dialogue. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Bless you. Ladies and gentlemen, meet me at the same time next week, where the wonderful Lisa Gar of Gaia TV and Hey House is going to be with me. I know that she's interviewed Sheila several times. Is that right? Lisa Gar?
Lisa has not, but Regina Meredith of Gaia.
Gaia
We
has.
have many conversations on Gaia. It's a great platform for sure.
Yeah. I'm going to be there in July. But Lisa, how interesting. I thought Lisa said that she'd interviewed you, so I'll have to prompt that.
Now, maybe, there might be a time that they're looking at making that happen this year, because we have many things that are coming up. So, and I would love it. I would look forward to it. It's fun.
Bless you. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful day. And if you're listening to this recording, please tune into stewartpearce.com and you will see lots and lots of wonderful, spicy things, as well as, of course, asktheo.com, which is Sheila's website. Stay where you are, please, dear Sheila, and au revoir, namaste, namaste to everybody.